So we've heard a lot over the course of the last sort of 20 years from people like Robert Kiyosaki and the benefits of understanding what he terms the cash flow quadrant. And your question to me is, how does a direct fusion business model tie in with some of the philosophies or underlying principles of Robert Kiyosaki's teachings? Let's go to the whiteboard and I'll answer that question. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Robert Kiyosaki teachings, essentially what we're talking about here is what he terms the cash flow quadrant. And everyone occupies some position on the quadrant. Up here in the top left hand corner it's employee, this is self-employed person, over here on the bottom left hand side, over here on the right hand side is business owner, and this is reserved for large business corporates. And then down here is investor. And what Kiyosaki postulates is that the difference between the people on the left versus right hand side of the quadrant is actually skill set and mindset, and obviously coming back to some of the decisions that they've made. And he postulates that the people on the right hand side of the quadrant actually control 90% of the wealth circulating the planet, and these people over here control 10%. So this is wealth. And what he says is that these people over here, spend basically all of their time exchanging time for money. So 90% of their time is exchanging time for money. Versus these people over here have money working for them. So essentially, what does this vertical axis represent? Well, in the lives of somebody that occupies one of these positions over to the left, this is, you can call it a number of things. I call it risk, and I call it limiting belief. Limiting belief. Okay, so there's this represents a risk threshold, quite literally the outskirt of their belief system. And the reason why a lot of people are comfortable just exchanging time for money and turning up and doing their job and going home and not really thinking further outside of that is because they've become accustomed to operating within their comfort zone, and to the extent that they start to move beyond it, it's uncomfortable for them and they retreat. So, in terms of what I call the entrepreneurial seizure, obviously the people down here that are self-employed have broken free at some level away from that employee mindset, but typically what happens here is most self-employed people have really just bought themselves a job. There's very little that's duplicatable or leverageable about what they do. So essentially they may make good money and they may be able to consistently do what they do over time, but there's no real leverage there. There's going to be a limit. There's going to be a limit here to what they can achieve, because the limitation in this part of the quadrant is them. You can obviously see over here in the employee, the limitation over here is your employer. Your employer is going to dictate to you when you work, how much you get paid for what you do, when you go on holidays. Your limit over here is the limit that you've put on yourself and the limit that you've allowed to be put on you from your employer. Now, the people that can break free of this, and this is obviously what we refer to as the left side of the quadrant, and this is what we refer to as the right side of the quadrant. So the people that can actually break free from the left to the right, they need, Kiyosaki postulates that they need a couple of things. They need belief, they need to take action, but first and foremost they need education. You need education, because to the extent that you can become educated as to what it takes to succeed over here as either a business owner and or investor, will determine how you succeed on the right side of the quadrant. And everyone has the ability to develop belief, take action, and to educate themselves to move from the left to the right. But for whatever reason, only a small handful try. So the question's been asked to me, where does a direct fusion business sit in the context of the cash flow quadrant as depicted here by Kiyosaki's theories or books? And the answer is, it sits right here. And to the extent that you grow it and understand some concepts to do with servant leadership and understand and develop your emotional intelligence and are prepared to delay gratification and invest in others and help other people grow their business and become successful, you can actually shift your business down into the investor quadrant. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to sit it there and I'm going to tell you exactly the reasons why. Because in a direct fusion business, we take some of the best components of franchising, multi-level marketing, direct sales, and we fuse them all together to give people a vehicle that can give them immediate leveraged income and ultimate leverage long term. And as a result of that, what you can do is you're obviously working as an independent business owner, so you're not an employee. You're not an employee. Whilst you're an independent business owner, you're creating significant income, and I would advise that you get proper tax planning advice and corporate advice around establishing your business. So for all intent and purposes, you may be a sole trader to start out, but you're certainly not like a tradesman or a small professional that's just focusing on one thing. So you're not a self-employed. You're not fully an investor, because in the most part you will still be taking an active role in growing your business and growing your team and developing your leadership skills and the leadership skills of other people. And this is the reason why I would sit it here. And because of some of the ways in which our compensation structure works, where you're leveraging off those back-end sales, if you've watched my previous video that talks about the differences between a direct fusion business and the people working in the professional sales industry, I talk about the sales funnel comparisons. Here you are truly an investor in our business because you can create multiple streams of income. The business model has 3 income streams and a residual income stream. And you can have those work to your advantage, and this can become the cash flow vehicle for you to go on and invest in other asset classes, because there's the ability here for you to produce significant income, multiple 6-figure incomes and above, subject to how much action that you take. So are you a business owner? Yeah, because of structuring, because of activity. You can build this on a global scale. You can start to have, you can outsource and have people associated with your company all around the world, maybe performing some other functional things that you want them to do, and I'll get more involved in outsourcing a little bit later. But the business sits squarely here, so I hope that addresses the question that's been asked. If you're looking for a way in which you can move from the left to the right hand side, you simply need to get around the right people. You need great mentoring at this point. You need to be introduced to an opportunity that will allow you to develop the belief to take the action that you need to take through the education that you've gained. You then need the coaching and mentoring and support through a systematized approach that's going to allow you to create significant income for you to go and invest in other assets and become an investor, the investor that you're destined to become. So I hope that addresses that question.